will be taxiing right up in front of you on the taxiway. So we ask you remain up on the bank and do not go down over the bank onto the taxiway, please.
Yeah, this is a B-25.
By only a couple hundred pounds. A couple hundred pounds difference between the Thunderbolt and the Avenger. Which just those two planes kind of put proof to you put a big enough engine on anything, it's gonna fly. The Avenger actually was the first plane that was called compound wing design. What that means is those wings actually on that plane, they fold up and then they fold back as well. That way, that plane can actually get skinnier and they can stack a whole bunch of them in an aircraft carrier. Because if you look at that plane sitting out there on the tarmac now, there's not going to be a whole lot of those that's going to fit in the hangar bay of an aircraft carrier. But you fold the wings up, they become much more compact. There were a lot of carrier-based planes that did that. The F-4U Corsair, its wings folded up. Many others also did as well. There were a three-man crew. You had your pilot, you had your turret gunner, and you had one guy who served as your radio man, your ventral gunner, and your bombardier, kind of three guys all in one. The bomb bay on that, how many of you guys poked your heads up into the bomb bay? All right, what'd you see up there? Bombs? Well, it's a good thing. It's a good thing to be up in a bomb. Debuted. Grumman unveiled these. Grumman unveiled these on December 7th, 1941, at their facility. Any of you little guys know what happened December 7th, 1941? No? No? Okay. Well, good. Yeah, Pearl Harbor. Well, whenever Pearl Harbor happened, there wasn't Facebook, there wasn't the internet, there wasn't Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff that you could communicate very quickly. By the time they received word at Grumman's facility that the Pearl Harbor attacks happened, they quick shuttered everything up and got the plane inside and pretty much rushed them into Action American B-25 Mitchell. At the time, they were made by North American. Boeing now owns North American. You look up North American B-25 Mitchell, it takes you to Boeing's website. How awesome does that thing sound coming in now? Those two radial engines just screaming. That was awesome. The B-25 Mitchell got its namesake from General Billy Mitchell. General Billy Mitchell was a big advocate for the effectiveness of bombers, especially against ships. Because early in World War II, they hadn't had a whole lot of success with the success of bombing. So, Billy Mitchell argued very strongly, said this can work. This will work. Interesting thing about those planes, there was never a test version built. There was never a model built that they were building it just for the sole purpose of testing it, working out the bugs. They built them, and any modifications that needed to be made, they made them while they were doing the shakedown flights on the planes. There was such a demand for bombers, they didn't mess around with getting tests done and things like that. They rushed them right into production.
25 cruises at 200 miles an hour. Well, that's a typical cruise speed. Yeah. I say that during the war, when money didn't matter and the enemy was the issue, they could operate at a lot higher power settings. It had a top speed, a never exceed speed of 340 miles an hour during World War II. Of course, it burned a lot of fuel, and the engines didn't last long. So the objective today is to operate in our environment and make it last and preserve the 70-year-old airplane.
We run 75 gallons an hour cruise, about 1.1 gallons a minute.
The Avenger and the B-25 share the same basic engine. It's a Wright Cyclone. It has 14 cylinders. The B-25 is 1,700 horsepower. The Avenger is 1,900 horsepower. So the B-25 burns 150 gallons an hour, and the Avenger 75.
Take that times $6 a gallon, folks, to get them here. Ding, ding, ding. You want the charter flight? Yes, sir.
The bombs are real casings. There's no TNT in them or no explosives, but they're real casings. They were actually obtained some years ago out of a loft in a steel mill in Harrisburg. They were actually made there during the war. They've been stored all these years, and they got to us, and we installed them in the B-25. On the TBM, the bombs that are in that are replicas. They're not real. And the same with the rockets that are on the wings. They're replicas also, but they're exact replicas of the way it would have been. B-25, as it sits on a ramp ready to fly, weighs 21,000 pounds. It has a gross weight, meaning all you can load in it in fuel and armament and crew, of 34,000 pounds.
How many
internal fuel tanks, 980 gallons of fuel, range about 1,000 miles.
TBM's 325 gallons of fuel, and empty weight's about 10,500 pounds, and at max loaded weight, 18,200 pounds.
Empty weight's almost, is just a little bit more than what it can carry. That's pretty cool. Well, this is only the one that's flies in the United States that's most completed with original. We talked something about that.
It's received awards at various, like for instance, Experimental Aircraft Association in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Won Best Bomber there, and it is known to be one of the most complete B-25s that exists. It's got the Norden bomb sight, the real bombs, and all of the old original radios are in there, although they're not operable, but all of that equipment, all that wartime equipment is in this airplane.
And you found this in B-25 where? It has a history.
Yeah, the history of this airplane is it flew in the Air Force until 1959, and then it was surplus and was picked up by the Tallman's Movie Studios in 1969, and it became 6C, the tail number 6C, in the movie Catch-22, if you've ever seen that, which was kind of a spoof on World War II of a particular squadron. It's an interesting novel. I think that was one of the 10 novels, the best novels of the 20th century, as I understand it. After Catch-22, it got sold surplus, and it became a gate guardian of a small airport out in Ohio near Cleveland. And a collector found it there and was able to purchase it and began the restoration. And in 1981, it was donated to our museum, which is the Mid-Atlantic Air Museum in Reading, Pennsylvania. TBM was a fire bomber in Canada. It had, after World War II, it became involved in the Canadian Armed Forces. Then it got surplus and became a fire bomber. It actually, on a firebombing mission, crashed into a lake up in New Brunswick. It was rather shallow water, and they picked it out of the lake and never flew it after that. And a collector in Maine bought the airplane, never did anything with it, and a guy in actually around in York County, south of Harrisburg, who was a World War II TBM radio operator and bombardier, always wanted to buy a TBM and restore it, and he had the means to do so. And he put a crew together and bought the airplane and restored it, and ultimately, after a 7-year restoration, donated it to our museum.
You might not like my stuff.
I think you guys better keep an eye on this guy.
Hey, how you doing,
You
bud?
better keep an eye on this guy.
How's World Trade
He's one of them politician type people. You gotta keep an eye.
Hey.
All the turnpike come out, huh?
That was scary. He bought a tank.
He said, well, they were down in Florida, and he said he was going to go. They wanted to try it. He was there. He said he's going to try it. And we're back here. Yep. That's the last I heard. And then I can't remember. He told me he died.